It's a new year. Time for a new episode of the NHL 94 podcast. I'm Len the Legend. And in this rip, I sit down and talk to John, aka Chaos. What do we talk about? Well, if you're watching this on video, you can see exactly what it is. It is the 1.0 NHL 94 fighting ROM that John just released. And here's a fight between Ken Baumgartner and Terry Yake. A mismatch if I ever saw it, but Yake, he's got the nuts to go up against the Bomber. Either way, we have a nice discussion about all the effort that was put into getting this up and running. Not just hundreds of hours, but it's more than that, thousands of hours. John did a lot of work. And furthermore, there's even a link below if you want to buy him a coffee just to show your appreciation for getting fighting back into NHL. Screw you, NHL, for taking it out in the first place. John, thank you for putting it back in there. So I hope you have a good time listening to this. The first few minutes, we're feeling each other out, just like we're playing NHL 94, and then we dive deep into the fighting ROM. So hope you enjoy it. Stick around. This is going to be a beaut. Welcome, 16-bit hockey fans, to another edition of the NHL 94 podcast. I'm the host, Len the Legend, and back with me is Chaos. John, how are you?
Good. How are you doing, Len?
Happy New Year. I'm great. Just for people that are wondering what this is, we're recording this January 1st. 2026. So if you're going to be listening or watching this in the future, this is the very beginning of the new year. So we have a blank slate ahead of us. What's going to happen this year? So hopefully you had a great New Year's, John.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was pretty low key. How about you?
I'm sitting in the chair. You know, I'm not, I'm not horizontal. So that's a huge bonus for me.
Yeah, when you get older, it's not as exciting. That's when you get younger. That's when you're younger.
That's exactly it. You know what? I want to thank you for taking time to come on. And the reason why I want to talk to you is because of the latest development in the NHL 94 ROM world. And you have now worked hard to get fighting put back in the game. But before we get into this, I just want to bring up something. The last time you and I had any sort of anything to do with each other was the King of 94. Remember that? Where you smoked me 2-0 in those two games. And I was so like, I don't care. I was so happy to sit next to you, and you were giving me tips about stuff in the game. About, if I recall correctly, you were saying that the third period boosts last until a whistle is blown after 2:30. Is that correct? Yeah. And you were talking about the expansion teams. They should have the worst bonus when they're on a penalty kill and the worst bonus, but apparently it's reversed. They get a huge bonus. You were telling me this. I remember this vividly at the King of 94. You were at the left side of me, I was the right side of you, and you just absolutely smoked me. It was fun to play. Good times. So
yeah, what was that matchup you called? You called that matchup. Was it Anaheim, Ottawa? I think it was
something. It was or Florida, one or the other. Yeah,
I think Anaheim, Ottawa. Florida. Yeah, it might have been Anaheim, Florida.
In the previous game, it might have been Quebec and somebody else, but
I think the previous game was you called it the expansion matchup.
That's
trying to be sneaky.
Well, yeah, I'm a disciple of Schmoz when it comes to
that. So let me touch base on that. The third period bonus, which is something I found when I don't remember what I was looking at. It was a long time ago. It was probably before the source code came out. It was a while ago. Third period bonus is mostly for CPU teams. So when you're playing against the computer and you're let's say you have a lead on them and you get into the third period, the third period bonus is applied to the team that's behind. So if you're losing 3-1, you get this bonus. If you're tied, both teams get the bonus. So if it's a 3-3 game, both teams get it. It boosts. Back in the day, I don't know who coined it. It might have been W Boy who created the NHL old school editor, the nose program that we use for editing ROMs. When they discovered all the attributes of the players, there was one no one really knew what it was, so they labeled it roughness. It's not really roughness. What it actually is pass shot bias for the CPU player. So trying to remember. So there was some statistical analysis done on how they chose the values for each player. Like, if you had more assists, you were more likely to pass than you were to shoot. during that season, the 92-93 season, the player. Like I think actually, like Jeremy Roenick actually is more likely to pass than he is to shoot, because I think he finished with a ton of assists compared to his goal count, as an example. So it gives a huge boost to that. So the higher the number, the more they're going to shoot. The CPU player is going to shoot. And then there's also another boost that's given to checking. So the checking rating will get a +2. So the roughness or the pass shot bias gets doubled. And then the checking gets a +2, I believe. Double check that real quick while I'm talking to you here.
And just because of that, when I hear this, if I have the boost, I am not going to try to select my defenders in that case.
Yes. So what checking does is the opportunity, the higher the number, the more likely they're going to try to check someone. They're going to be more aggressive, right?
Yeah.
So the whole idea of the third period bonus is roughness ×2, and then offensive awareness also gets a bonus. It gets +1, I believe. Checking gets +2, and then roughness gets doubled. The pass shot bias gets doubled. So your players are just going to be more aggressive. Mm-hmm. Okay, so they're going to try to get the puck back as best as they can. They're going to be checking more. They're going to be, if it's a CPU team, they're going to be shooting more often. So it just makes them a little bit more aggressive. The bonus lasts for a period of time. Once the timer hits 2 minutes and 30 seconds, it's supposed to shut off. But the way the game works is nothing really gets changed until it's face off. There's a stoppage in play. There's a face off. When the face off happens, that's when it loads all the bonuses in. Like if you have your home bonus, your away negative bonus, like if you have a -1 for away, your hot and cold, all that stuff gets added. It's the players are loaded one at a time when it starts to face off. So it's supposed to last until 2:30, but it won't wear off until there's a face-off, after, between when there's 2:30 left in the period and the end of the game. Mm-hmm. If you end up being tied into overtime, both teams get the bonus as well in overtime.
So it carries over to them.
So obviously you're going to be tied in overtime. If the game goes to overtime, you both get the bonus as well in overtime. So your players will be a little bit more aggressive, especially on defense. They'll probably be checking more, trying to get the puck back. And the other major thing is to the pass shot bias for a CPU team. You also get a little bit of a bonus to the offensive awareness, which the offensive awareness is used to retrieve loose pucks.
Closest to the puck, the two defenders. If I recall correctly. I changed them after talking to you. I changed my game slightly. In a defensive zone, I try very hard not to use defender if possible. I would like to use a winger or center. I want to use those. I want to let the CPU manage my two defenders with hopes that they check somebody down. That's my, So I've changed my game ever so slightly after talking to you, since you've revealed this what's going on under the hood. So thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a really good strategy, because usually your defenders are heavier guys. So they're usually heavier weight, maybe 9, 10, 8, 9, 10 weight, 11 weight, 12 weight. And so if you don't know how to successfully do like a CB check, which is when you throw a check and then you immediately switch off the guy because of the weight bug, if you were to hit the guy while you're still you still have the star on him, the check is going to be unsuccessful, because most of the cases the defenders are heavier than the lighter forwards that are carrying the puck. But if you switch off of him at the right time and he hits the player as a CPU defender, then the check is going to be successful. So yeah, actually that's exactly what I do. I just kind of leave my defenseman alone. Maybe sometimes I'll switch to them and move them into a better position, and then switch off of them again, try to get back to a winger or a center, and then play defense with my forwards and let my defenders do do what they're supposed to do. Yeah.
I never thought about moving him around, one them around. That's a good strategy. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Now,
sometimes, you move them a little bit and then they'll try to go somewhere else afterwards because of their assignment, their defensive assignment, but they might get into the way of, a passing lane, or they might decide, oh, hey, I'm going to go check that guy, things like that. Yeah. So just the little nuances, moving, sometimes if the guy's too aggressive, right? He's trying to get the puck in the corner. The guy in the corner with the puck, you might want to, I want you to go back into the center, right? And you physically select him, move him back in the center where he's probably supposed to be. And he might, he'll stay there instead. So yeah, you could kind of manipulate them a little bit.
So while I have you here, I got two more questions for you. I mean, I know we're going to talk about fighting, but I just wanted to get this. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah. I was going to talk about the power play and the penalty kill thing too. Go ahead. Ask your question.
Well, two players, same weight. Is it a coin flip? Who knocks a player down? Or is it a heavier guy? If you CB check, you're going to knock him down. Or lighter guy who's going to knock him down, but they're same weight. What is the calculation there?
So it's very hard. All right. So, the main thing is weight, right? Usually you got to be like 2 weight above, 2 weight below, I mean, with the weight bug, to have like an almost 100% chance of checking a guy down, right? One thing I do like to note, if the guy's on the board and you're checking him into the board, nothing matters. The guy's going to get hit. Yeah. He might do a toddle depending on his stick handling, but it's going to be a successful check unless he gets the toddle, which is kind of luck with stick handling and RNG. But 90% of the time, the guy's getting knocked down. Weight, regardless of weight, doesn't matter. So we're talking open ice here. Usually you need a 2 differential to give you a very, very good chance of knocking a guy down. Once you get into the only 1 weight differential and the 0 weight, then you start to get further down in the calculation. So the next thing would be check rating. So the checking rating of the player comes into effect. And then after that, there's a little bit of RNG, rolls the dice. Okay, maybe we'll give you this chance. And if it gets below like a 0, then it's going to be a chance to be a successful check. Yeah. If not, then it's no good. Yeah. So you're running into the chance of RNG and the check rating of the player. So a higher check rating, the guy's more than likely going to get knocked down, regardless, if they're the same weight. That's why there's a lot of, a guy like Ray Bork, who's 10 weight and 6 check, right? He could actually knock the guys, 2-3 weights lower than him. He can knock down a 7 weight guy with RNG and his checking rating. So even though you have that difference in weight, there are still times when he can knock the guy down if the situation is correct. You get the right RNG roll, you're hitting him with enough impact, like things like that. So you might see that from time to time when there's certain guys who just, they'll do a regular C check with a guy and he'll be able to knock a lighter guy down. And you're like, what the hell's happening? He shouldn't be able to do that. Well, if he's got a high enough checking and he's got a good roll of his RNG, he's going to get knocked down regardless. Sense. Yeah.
Okay. Because there was a game against Whalers. I did a CB check. I forget who it was. I think it was hitting Granado or something. And I expected him to go down, but he didn't. But I guess because they were close enough in weight, and then so the checking in RNG came into account. So, okay.
Yeah, and also it has to do with how you hit the guy, the impact, right? So
is it the speed?
If 2 guys are skating at each other, it's going to be a high impact. But if he's skating away from you and you're hitting him from behind, there's a little less of an impact. Yeah. Yeah.
Ever see this bug? I played I Am Drew today, and he pointed out something I've never seen before. We started the game. I think the first or second period, I forget it was, 4:59 was on the clock. It wasn't 5 minutes. It was 4:59. Have you ever seen this before?
It started with 4:59 on the clock?
Yeah, he pointed it out, and I haven't recorded. So I just thought it was an odd bug. I'm just wondering, have you ever encountered this before? Yeah, it was.
I've never seen that.
I'm going to file this as a protest. I lost that game, and I'm going to stop. I'm kidding. Before I even started,
the difference, you lost that second.
It was it.
Could have done that extra second.
He's a good player, too. I was happy to lose to him. You said you were going to talk about power play and penalty kill before I interrupted you.
Okay. So I don't remember if I've ever mentioned this on here, maybe ages ago, but while I was finding that third period, while I found the third period bonus, the other thing I found was the power play and the penalty kill, the bug with that. So they're saved, and this is, I think, even in the manual, you'll see, strong, average, or weak. I forget what the three are for plus. So like if you have a home advantage, right, you might have, or a power play advantage, right, you might have weak is like a +0 bonus, so you don't get anything. Average is like a +1. Strong is like a +2, I think. And then I think there's a +3 also. Or there might not be a +3. There's a -3. I know that. For penalty kill. And
you have a strong, average.
Yeah, weak, strong, and average, right? And then the other way, like if you look at let me go here to
brutal. There's also the
Anaheim.
brutal.
Brutal, yeah. That's the one I was looking for. So you have weak, insignificant. That's it's a power play one. Yeah, there's some weird ones. Anyway, you have a 0, a +1, a +2 for power play, and you're supposed to have a negative 0, -1, -2, -3 for penalty kill. Okay. And these bonuses, the power play and the penalty kill affect, power play affects offensive awareness, stick handling, shot accuracy, and passing. And penalty kill is offensive awareness, stick handling, and shot accuracy. So the difference is there's a passing for power play. That's the difference between the two. The other two get offensive awareness, stick handling, and shot accuracy. Either if you have a plus, you're getting a positive bonus. If you have a minus, you're getting a deduction, a negative bonus, let's say. So these are saved per team, right? Each team has a specific set of values. Like a team like Detroit has a 0-0. So they're neutral, penalty kill, power play. They don't get any bonus. Quebec is another one that's 0-0. I think there's another one that's 0-0. It might be Calgary. I forget. But anyway, so those teams aren't really affected by this problem, this bug. So the bug is the game has them saved properly, power play, penalty kill, but when it uses those values to apply the bonuses to the players on the ice, it swaps them. So it's using the penalty kill value for the power play, and it's using the power play value when there's a penalty kill. So, maybe, if you got a team that's +1 and -1, they're both weak, or they're weak power play and they're strong penalty kill, which is like a -1 for penalty kill, +1 for power play. It doesn't matter because they're just getting swapped. They're both +1 and -1 regardless. But when you get to a team like an expansion team, like Anaheim, which is a -3 penalty, they're supposed to be -3 penalty kill. They're actually a +3 on the power play because of how it's messed up. So it'll use the penalty kill value as the power play bonus. So you get a +3. And a lot of the expansion teams, I think except for Tampa Bay, have the same issue. Yeah. So not an issue. It's a positive. So if you play an expansion team and you have a power play, again, the other thing too, I was telling you earlier about the whistle with the third period bonus, where it needs to be within the last 2 minutes, last 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Same thing with the power play and the penalty kill bonus. They don't get applied until the first whistle after the penalty is called. So that initial face-off on the power play or the penalty kill, you don't have the bonus.
Oh,
you have to wait. You got to knock the puck out, or have a play stoppage. Then that face-off is when the bonus is applied. So yeah, so if you have an expansion team and you win the opening face-off after the power play, after you have a power play, win the opening face-off, dump the puck, or give it to your goalie, have him hold it, or force your opposing goalie to hold on to the puck or something. Get a play stoppage, and you'll get your +3 bonus on your offensive awareness, stick handling, and shot accuracy. And a +3 is, so each point is equivalent to 0.2 on a 0 to 6 scale. So if you get a plus 3, that's a 0.6.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have a 4 skater. Now all of a sudden you have a 4.6 skater on the power play.
Bob Kudelski as the sniper on Ottawa becomes a viable option.
Yes, exactly. You get that 0.6 bonus there.
Okay,
Yep. So that's the trick. If you're playing as an expansion team and you get a power play, get rid of the puck.
And that's going to apply up until the next whistle. It's like first you have to get a whistle for it to take effect, and then that's going to be applied until the next whistle. So it's not until the penalty is finished.
That will stay until the whistle after the power play is over.
Right.
So if you have, let's say you get your power play and there's 3 minutes left, right? And you don't see another whistle, you get that initial whistle for the initial face off, then you get a play stoppage, you get your bonus. If you don't have another whistle for the rest of the period, you have the bonus the entire time.
Yep. And sometimes
obviously the start of the next period is going to be a play stoppage, and then they get reset. And the other thing too is, so they're supposed to have terrible penalty kill and bad power play. Now when you're on the penalty kill, you don't get a negative bonus because they have a 0 for their power play according to the manual, and in the game it's using that 0 now for their penalty kill value, so you're not getting a negative on your attributes for penalty kill.
I hope we open the door up to more people calling expansion teams in competitive play. I mean, really, there's an advantage here to be had. If you're at home, right? I want to see this. Smaz, this is for you. Hopefully we get this to become a reality.
He loves playing with expansion teams. He's always calling them.
I love doing it. Lately, I haven't played in competition a while, but I've done it.
Catch people off guard, yeah.
Yeah. Everyone likes to play with the better teams, teams that could skate and pass. No, give me the absolute crap. And I'm going to give it a shot. Obviously, it didn't work against you, but that's what I want to give it a shot. Right? Why not, right?
Depends who you call it against, yeah.
I guess so, that. Yeah. Never again against you. Actually, I'm going to have to try it. We'll see.
People who don't usually play with the expansion teams are the guys you want to get, yeah. Like, you don't want to call that against someone like Angry Jay or King Raph, because they usually get stuck playing expansion teams a lot, so.
Do you have any sort of matchup to call against those guys that you actually have, making the odds a little bit more even? They're always going to be skewed in their favor. Yeah. Let's be honest, right? I had Angry. I can't believe I'm going down this rabbit hole. I had Angry Jay in my group, The Last King, and I said, I know I'm going to lose. I'm going to get smoked. He mercied me within minutes. It was disgusting. Mm-hmm. So I just had to sacrifice a couple of teams that I wasn't going to use anymore. So I just did it. Just take these teams and just.
That's called strategy right there. Good job.
Right. I have no chance. You could play with an expansion. I could play with Chicago. It'll still be me. That's the reality of it. So what am I going to do? Just mercy me. Go ahead. I don't know. I had fun playing him though. He's a good guy, and you don't get humbled with him. You just learn, to lose. Yeah. Yeah, but I brought you here not just to talk about The Last King and not talk about expansion teams. I want to talk about what's new.
Let's get to the good stuff, right?
The fighting ROM. It's been, I guess, finalized. The version 1 is now in the wild.
It's all finalized. Yep. This was a long journey. I'm actually did not want to touch fighting, so we'll start from the beginning there. This is not one of my priorities, was putting fighting back into this game. I really don't care. But a lot of people, the source code was released almost 2 years ago. And then sometime last year around March, people were always asking me about fighting. And I'm like, no, I'm trying to learn everything else. Like, I really don't care. I did assignments. There are things I've covered that I've, analyzed and things like that in the code that I haven't even gone over yet, like skating, but I've stuck on fighting for so long, I have to look at that stuff again. I don't remember anything about it, but I have, all the notes and stuff and my comments and my code and everything. Anyway, sometime in middle of March, there was a discussion. We had a discussion about, I just covered shooting, and we went over that. And I think we had we definitely had a podcast about shooting, and we were talking about one-timers, and I was like, yeah, I was telling everyone in the Discord about one-timers and stuff, and then we're like, oh, what about doing like a fake one-timer? And I think McMarcus figured it out with the 92 code. He was able to add in and make a fake one-timer, and then he did with 94, and then someone else had mentioned fighting again, and I'm like, all right, let me look at this. I'm like,
the rolling of the eyes.
Maybe it's possible, right? Because for years, I mean, we have always thought it impossible. This has always been like the number one question is, what about fighting? Can fighting be added back into the game? We know it was taken out by I think the NHL. It was NHL's call, not the NHLPA, was the one that said, no, you got to take it out. Well, it just so happened that when I'm looking at the disassembled code, and I mean, I'm using the 92 source code and comparing to the 94 code that I have, the disassembled version. Disassembled meaning it's just a bunch of assembly language commands, right? And there's nothing that tells me, oh yeah, this is for shooting, this is for passing. That's all stuff I had to figure out. What is what? And I've kind of used it as a comparison using the 92 source code, trying to find the same subroutines for passing, for fighting, for checking, for the bonuses and stuff like that. Like all the things that I already knew, I looked at those things first and figured out where they were. And then I played off of that, okay, wait a minute, these instructions look similar to this subroutine for passing in the 92 source code. Then I go through it and I'm like, all right, okay, yeah, this is definitely the passing subroutine. Okay, let me label that. And so painstakingly labeling things, commenting assembly code and things like that, gotten to the point where I could see where fighting would be inserted, where the fighting code would be in the 94 code that I'm looking at. And so there's a period, there's an area for checking. So it looks for Y position between the players, and if they're within a certain amount of pixels, and it's like, all right, now let's check the X pixels. Checks for distance in X if they're within a certain amount of pixels. And then the next thing it'll check is for collisions. So it'll check for, these players are going to hit each other, or are they skating in the opposite direction? They might be close to each other, but they might be skating opposite directions. Okay, if they are, no checking, right? So they go, okay, yeah, no, they are skating towards each other. Then the next check is it with the goalie? So it's checking for interference. Is it going to call an interference penalty? Is a guy going to run into the goalie? No. And the next check is fighting. And so there was a part of the code that said, when I'm looking at the 92 source code, I'm like, oh, check fight. There's this subroutine called check fight in 92. And I see the spot where it should be, where it's called in 94, but it leads to an empty code. It just means it leads to a return. So there's nothing there, just blank. But the code was there at some point.
So it's executing some sort of routine, some subroutine.
Yeah. So it's executing, it's going through the subroutine, and then it's going, okay, check. Should we check for fight? Okay, we're going to check for fight. It enters the check fight subroutine, but there's nothing there. It just goes back, and then it continues. The next one is the check for check. So that's what we were just talking about with the wait and the checking so that's after the fight check. So first it's checking for a fight, then it's going to check, is the guy going to get knocked down? So yeah, the code was there. There's also flags for the players. Are they involved in a fight? If they are, they can't do certain things like, in other parts of the code, right? And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, all the conditional checks are there. They lead to nothing, right? There was even a flag for the players, which I had no idea what it did. And it's not in the 92 source code. So there are a lot of differences, many similarities, but many differences between 92 and 94. But the 93 code and the 94 code are very, very similar. This game, like I know, everyone credits Mark Lesser with the 94, NHL 94. Mark just took the code from 93 and he added things. So a lot of the code from NHL 93 is the same as NHL 94. And so I started looking at the NHL 93 code and I said, it looks exactly the same. And here we go. Here's the check fight code from 93. So I found the subroutine in 93 And then I took the code out. I analyzed it line for line, trying to figure out exactly what's going on. And then I took it out, and then I'm like, all right, so I have the check fight code. Now I just have to figure out what it does, right? Or how to put it into 94. So I figured it all out, and then I'm like, all right, so I need to link these certain subroutines that it's calling for, these certain RAM variables it's looking for, these certain flags and things like that. I had to kind of change the values because they were specific to 93, 94. There's a bunch of other stuff added to it. So I had to, reroute everything, rematch everything up, and then I was able to put the code in. The check fight code, I was able to put the code, the fight input code in was the other one, and then everything linked to fighting. There was a few other subroutines. Put it all in, worked first try. When things work the first try in programming, it's like very lucky because nothing ever works the first time, right? So it worked. It was great. And problem was I didn't have the sprites and the frames, right? So it was just people poking each other with sticks because I just used, instead of the fight frames, I just chose a bunch of other animations, just make sure that the code worked first before I moved to the next step, right?
I remember you showed a GIF of that.
Yeah.
You posted it, and it was very exciting to see that. That was very preliminary in this whole I mean, very advanced for a lot of us, but in terms of getting it put in there, still kind of the very beginning. But it was an exciting time.
No, that was within a month. So I started looking at it end of March. By the mid-April, April like 20th, I would say, I had the code in and the code was working. And so that was huge. I'm like, all right, well, that I knew wasn't going to be the hardest part. The hardest part was going to be the sprites and the frames, because we had no idea. No one has ever touched any of that. They have no idea. I mean, they've manually gone in and added like stick tape patches and helmet patches and things like that, eyes, things like that. But no one really understood how the game built the frame that you see on the screen. When a player's skating, there's a few frames of him skating, a few different, there's an animation, which is a group of frames, frame 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of this guy skating, but we don't know how that's assembled. We don't know how it calls those frames and things like that. So that was the next step, was trying to figure that all out. And that took the longest. Luckily I had some help. McMarcus and Abdul helped me. We went through the code. We were able to reverse engineer 92. Now the 92 frames and sprites, the animations and everything like that was different, but 93 and 94 were exactly the same as each other. So once we figured out how 92 laid it out, we were able to kind of use that. I was able to use that and figure it out for 93, 94. And that was huge, because once I was able to get the sprites, that was it. After that point, it was just, that was top of the hill. It was going to be downhill from there. I was able to pull the sprites and the frame information out of 93 and then put it into 94. And then after that, it was just working on bugs, adding the banner, a couple other things, adding the injuries, things like that, and, the fight injuries and stuff like that, and trying to balance the play. Because the next problem was, all the fight checks and everything were in there in 94 already, but the players weren't designed to fight. The best way to say that. There was only 15 players that would have been able to fight in the game if I just left everything the same. So I had to do some research on that too. I used a couple of websites to research how many fights each player got into in 92-93 season. And then I was able to change their fight ratings based on that number of fights. And so I was able to get them. And so now there's like 60 something fighters, I believe. I forget the name of them, but at least each team has at least one fighter on their team. The other thing too was I had to add, now this is all working behind the scenes. The next thing was how to show the user who can fight and who can't. So I had to go into 93 code, and then because the 93 code will show fighting, when you're looking at the edit lines or the team roster. So I had to pull that code out, figure out how it did that, understand how it was working in 93, pull it out, add it to 94. And so now you could see who can fight and who can't. You could see their fight rating in the menus. And after that was just a couple bugs.
Essentially, 0 fight rating means you're not a fighter and it's
can't fight at all.
Yeah, 14 I believe is the lowest.
Yes, so 14 is the scale is a 0 to 14 scale. Okay, so the attribute that's used is the same as the determining if the player's lefty or righty. Okay, so that's just one bit. So if the player's odd, if the value is odd, the player's a righty. If it's even, they're a lefty. But the whole even part of that value is actually their fight rating. So it's on the 0 to 14 scale. In the original 94, there wasn't anyone above a 12 on the 0 to 14 scale. The other thing I had also figured out was that the fight rating is still used in the game. It was still used in the game. It was used to determine game or period injuries. So when a player got injured, depending on their fight rating and the fight rating of the guy that hit them would determine if they were injured for the game or injured for the period. And there are many players who will always be injured for the game. And then there's other players that are only injured for the period. And there's some that it depends who hits them. So could I have?
I remember Grant Ledger. Grant Ledger
was
the discovery is that the guy that you want to play on defense in Buffalo because he's the guy that could potentially knock players out for the game.
He had a 12. He was one of the guys with the top rating. Basil McRae. There was a guy on
Edmonton. Louis
Edmonton.
DeBrusque.
Louis DeBrusque. And then guy on Philly.
Bob McGill?
It might be McGill. Let me see.
Is McGill on Philly or is he in Chicago? I can't remember. Oh no, he's in Toronto during that time.
Yeah, hold on, I'll tell you right now. So
these are the guys you want to start in your team.
Guys,
you want to boot it up.
Basil McRae was on St. Louis. Tony Twist,
yes.
Tony Twist was in the 12. I think Sean Cronin. I think that's the guy on Philly. These are all the guys who are 10 or higher. I'm looking at right now. Ledyard was a 12. I have this post.
And I remember you were saying Ledyard's the only guy that is somewhat playable,
liable to start. Yeah.
You can throw him in there. You could CB check, and if he's hot, his agility is decent enough that game. He's not going to be too much of a pylon.
Yeah. A lot of these heavy guys are just not really easy to use. And okay, here we go. Yeah. Ledyard, DeBrusque on Edmonton, Cronin on Philly, Tony Twist on Quebec, and Basil McRae on St. Louis. Those are the goons. Those are the guys with the 12 originally in the game. So anyway, I went through all the fights. Certain guys got into more fights, so I gave them a higher fight rating. I kind of said, all right, if you're like 20 fights in the season, all right, you're going to be up high. If you won a lot of your fights, you're going to have a high fight rating. And then I kind of teetered it down. I didn't want to mess with players that had that already had a less than 10 fight rating, or not so much. Those players. So the only players who got into fights were the players I messed with, but the players who already had maybe high fight values, maybe not high enough to start a fight, but some of them did. I don't want to mess with them because then that also messes with the injury probabilities. So, if you're used to a guy getting injured for the game, that he always gets injured for the game. Like Dennis Savard always gets injured for the game. Mike Gartner too, maybe. I forget. It might depend on who hits him, but those guys I didn't want to mess. Things like that I didn't want to mess with. I only mess with the guys I needed to mess with because I'm trying to keep the game as original as possible. So anyway, I added more fighters. I put them on the check lines. So if you play with line changes, you put your checking line in, you get into a fight. Depending on the other circumstances, there's other prerequisites to fighting than just having a fighter who can, a player who can fight. But they have to have above to start a fight, one of the two players needs above a 71, or which is what the game sees as a 10. And to participate in a fight, player needs to be at least 14 or higher.
Mm-hmm.
So a 0 fight player is not going to participate in a fight.
Does a checking line, having a player on a checking line, give them a higher chance to either start or get into a fight, or is that simply semantics? Like the
No, it's
the
just
check.
how you don't usually play your checking line during the game.
Right.
You put them in for specific reasons, right?
Yeah.
So
is this
as far
the
as
final?
good.
Is this the final version that just came out? Like is there going to be some more tweaks to this?
Yeah, I think there'll be more tweaks to it at some point. This is good for now. Everything works. There's no bugs. I did add like an arcade mode. So the arcade mode is usual starters will get into fights. So originally, like I said, you have to be 71 or above. Arcade mode, I think you got to be 43 or above, which is most players. So a lot of the starters will actually get into fights eventually.
Yeah. It's like the 1970s. It's a beautiful way of playing the game.
So if you want to play like arcade mode is like you want to get into fights, right?
Yeah.
In regular mode with just regular fighting on, you have to look for the fight. You have to. Yeah, I definitely want to fight. Whereas the arcade mode, you could just play and you'll get into fights. But in the regular mode, you have to actually put the effort into. All right, let me put my checking line out. It's middle, second period, third period. You need to have a certain, both teams, the total checks needs to be above a certain value.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to get in a fight immediately in the regular mode. So, are you like, all right, you got to think, all right, we're down 3-1. I want to put I got to start a fight. I want to change the momentum in this game. Let me put my guy out there, put my checking line out there, start a fight, win the fight. Maybe that guy goes to the box, obviously, but he did his job, right? That's what enforcers were.
Or knock the guy out for the
90s.
game. They got to stagger back to the
knock the guy out. Maybe you want to knock Gretzky. You want to make his head bleed,
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, has anybody talked to you about actually using this ROM in a future league?
Yeah, actually.
Nice.
So one thing I did was, all right, so I added fight, got it all working, got the bugs straightened out. What I released was the default NHL 94 version, the actual game, just with fighting added, right? And again, like I said, a couple tweaks to make a couple more players fight. My goal also was to make the patch able to use on existing custom ROM. So we have a lot of new rostered ROMs, like 2025 ROMs. Adam Catalyst has one.
Mm-hmm.
A couple other guys do. Or they have some kind of specific ROM, maybe college ROMs and stuff like that. Anyway, these are all based on. We have two ROM bases that are used for custom ROMs: a 30-team base and a 32-team base. And so my idea was to make this patch work on any ROM, not just the default 94 ROM. I wanted to make it compatible with custom ROMs. So anyone making a 2025 or 2026, or if they want to take one of their old ones, they could just put the patch on it, and boom, fighting will work. Now, obviously, they need to go in, they need to adjust players' attributes to make sure that they can fight and things like that, but it should work. That was my goal. So I do foresee some custom ROM makers using this patch. I know a few that are already going to. I believe there's going to be an online league soon by Indio, 2026 league, NHL 2026, that he's going to use the fighting patch on. So again, this is, I had a group of testers. You were one of them. We went through and, I started fine tuning some of the settings to kind of make it balance it better, especially with the arcade mode. Since I added that, I was kind of like, the people were getting into fights every 30 seconds. I had like 20 fights. All right, that was fun, like maybe one or two times. But then you're like, all right, I kind of want to play hockey, not fight and play hockey sometimes. You want it the other way around. So there was a lot of tuning with that, and I expect more tuning in the future, especially when it gets introduced into leagues and more people are playing with it. I expect to have to adjust a couple of the balances and things like that. So there will be updates in the future for sure. But right now, this is a good starting point.
And for getting those changes done, if they want to like provide feedback, do they have to go to the Discord that you've created for the fighting wrong community? So that's.
I mean, they could go in a Discord. They could go to the NHL94.com forums. They could contact me on GitHub, whatever. It doesn't matter. Yeah, if someone has, I want to hear feedback. I'll get it any way possible. Things need to be tweaked here and there. Arcade mode, there's too much fighting. Yeah, I kind of agree with that, but I'll tweak it a little bit for the next release. And some people like it, some people won't, but whatever. The other thing too is I did leave the patch very customizable for people who are going to use it in a, if they want to make their own fighting ROM for anything, if they want to just come out with their own version of the original also, they can make changes. It's very easy to make changes inside the code. I did leave some detailed descriptions on what each variable does that affects starting a fight, for instance. But yeah, another I forgot to bring up. So in order to get it to work, so the 30-team ROM, 30-team ROM and the 32-team ROM are 2 megabyte ROMs. So the original one's only 1 megabyte, and they needed to be expanded to add the new graphics and things like that. So they expanded it originally a long time ago, got expanded to 2 megabyte size. So the 30-team ROM, there's actually enough space in there for the patch. I didn't need to make any changes. It would can work on a 30-team ROM, no problem. 32-team ROM, on the other hand, uses a lot of that 2 megabyte space. And so my concern was I had, if it was to work, the patch was going to work on a 32-team ROM, I was going to need to make changes. So no one had ever tried expanding it to 3 megabytes or 4 megabytes before. And because there's a problem. So the NHL 94 cartridge has save RAM, right? And so the save RAM is used to save user records. So there's an option in the main menu, you could turn user records on. And a lot of these menu hacks, you can't turn them on, you leave them off. I'm sorry, a lot of the 30-team and 32-team ROM hacks says leave off because of the fact that you have extra teams and, they never did anything to change how to save the records for the extra teams other than the 28 slots available. The problem was, like I said, 32-team ROM, if I wanted to get this patch to work, I'd have to expand the ROM. So that was another thing I did. I figured out how to get around the SRAM problem. So the save RAM, it uses an area of the ROM in the 2 megabyte space. Sega Genesis. This is not just NHL 94. This is all Sega Genesis cartridges. They use a specific area of the ROM to temporarily write in that area and then use that area and send it to the save RAM to save it. So this area, when you first turn on the cartridge, is always validated. It'll write to it. It'll read to it. So even if, like I said, whatever, I don't give a shit. I don't give a crap.
I don't care. I don't care.
And I'm just going to tell people to leave the user records off. I don't want to deal with saving, right? I could have done that. I was like, no, I want to try to preserve the original ROM as much as I can. So I did modify those save RAM routines. So when it writes to the save RAM and reads, I found a website, plutidev.com, which had a lot of technical descriptions of the Genesis ROM header. And there's actually a hardware flag because there are a lot of games that are 4 megabytes. Phantasy Star 4 was the one I was actually looking at.
Yes.
To see how they did it in the code. So I actually disassembled that code and I looked at the save RAM area to see how they did it, and they used this flag. And I was like, all right. So I changed the save RAM subroutines to use the flag. So you turn the flag on when you're writing to save RAM, and then you turn it off when you want to use that area as ROM. So I was able to get that work, and it worked on the first try. That was another thing I was really happy about. Yeah, so now we have the ability to expand that this ROM is 3 megabytes because I have it expanded, so it works 32 team patch. We live in a terabyte society now. We don't really care about space. It's not the 90s. We could also expand it to 4 megabytes very easily just by changing one line in the code. So this is good because it opens up future hacks, especially now that I know how to insert sprites and insert animation frames, and I know all that information. We could actually add different sprites in now, different frames, and add the logic in. Like one thing I've always wanted to try to put in was shot blocking. It's shot blocking animation. I can do that now because I know exactly how everything works. And I can just add my code in. You hit maybe A and B at the same time. Your guy goes into a shot block animation, stops a slapper, getting to the goalie, things like that. Like these are things that we can, me and other developers can try to figure out how to add. We're able to add more functionality to this game because we have a lot more space now.
Is 4 megabytes the maximum that's available for the Genesis, or was there a cartridge that was released with greater capacity that would enable them to save the game that they did like in Phantasy Star 4?
Yeah, no, there's larger. I don't know what the largest game is, but they do go higher than 4 megabytes. The thing is that the Genesis, the 68K CPU can only address 4 megabytes. So then we get into bank switching, which is kind of what NES does. Yeah.
Okay.
With the mappers and things like that. So you get into a bank switching thing. You switch out the lower 4 megabytes to the different code and this and that. So yeah, no, it's definitely entirely possible, but that's a whole other shebang. Yeah. The code that I've used for the fighting really doesn't take up that much. And the fact that I left the sprite tiles in the original section of the code, the sprite tiles take up like 250 kilobytes.
It's compressed, right?
We always thought it was compressed, but when I looked at it more, it's not necessarily compressed. They're just organized differently than they were in 92 and 93. So a lot of the graphics are compressed, like the logos and On Ice logo and the the team logo and things like that. Some things are compressed. Like if there's one tile that's used multiple times, it's called multiple times.
Yeah.
They're not that's some kind of compression, right?
Yeah.
Sprite tiles are not. They're not compressed. We always thought they were, but they're actually not. They're just, some tiles are 1x1, some are 1x2, some are 1x3. They can go from 1x1 to 4x4. Like for instance, I think the largest one is the shattering of the glass. So that's actually sprite tiles. I think that's the largest sprite tile in the game. When you shatter the glass with a slap shot.
So for you to finally put in, and we have now the version 1 of the fighting ROM, like if you can estimate how many hours you dedicated towards this particular project, is there any number you could come up with, or is just like it's
probably like 1,000? It might be more than that. I was working on this almost every day for, I'd say, at least an hour or two every day.
So with that being said,
there were times I took a few weeks off. Like when I hit a milestone, I took 2 weeks off. I'm like, all right, I don't want to look at this for 2 weeks. Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah. And a lot of times too, we had a really difficult bug to find. There was occasionally at the end of the fight, the final punch, the game would freeze for like a few frames, and then the guy would fall, and then everything would continue.
Mm-hmm.
And it would only happen occasionally, but I couldn't figure it out for the life of me. And I spent days trying to like add stuff in to I thought maybe it was related to the crowd when it goes boo or cheering after the fight. I thought it was a few other things. I was just trying to skip around the code. I thought it had something to do with the injury part of the code when the player gets injured from the fight. So I commented that out, and I couldn't get it. I'm like, forget it. I'm just gonna, I was really thinking about releasing the ROM with that bug in it, and just trying to figure it out after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was you actually who brought up the fact that occasionally the player who wins the fight doesn't get the check mark. So in the game, there's two different penalties for fighting. There's one fighting, and then there's a fighting check mark. The fighting check mark means that that's the guy that won the fight. No difference in the penalty. They both get 5-minute majors, but it just shows, oh, he won the fight. So when you look through the penalty summary, you could see, oh yeah, this guy won here, he won here. And occasionally you wouldn't get that. And it just so happened the times you wouldn't get it was when the hesitation bug was there. And so you had mentioned it, and then I was looking at the code and I figured it out in 10 minutes. And that fixed that problem, and it fixed the hesitation bug at the same time. So it's pretty funny. The code has a lot of protection, so when any programmer knows, you don't want to get stuck in a loop, right? So if you're going through a while loop, you want to have a way out. You don't want to be stuck infinitely, in a loop where it's running infinitely, right? So that was the problem here. There was no check for this loop. And what happened was when the player would get knocked down, the game needs to, choose the player who won the fight. He's got to change. So originally, both players get the standard penalty fighting penalty. Because if you run out of time, there's a certain amount of time you can actually fight for. If you run out of time, they both get the same standard fighting penalty, right? When the guy gets knocked down, it says, all right, now I have to choose the guy who wins the fight. So that data for the delayed penalties are all kept in what's called a penalty buffer. And it's about 66 bytes long. I think it's 28 words. So it's 56 bytes wide, this penalty buffer, right? And what the penalty buffer has is just 2 bytes for each player. It just has their position on the team, their offset on the roster, and the penalty that they're being called for. Okay. And so whenever this is used, anytime there's a delay penalty, interference, tripping, whatever, the penalty buffer is used. And then once the penalty is given, the buffer's cleared. So what happened was it would, depending on how many penalties were in that buffer, if there were only 2 penalties, they took the top 4 spots, right? 2 for each player. The problem was when it looked for the penalty buffer, originally I had it set to look at the top position, the top byte, and then it would start to iterate through. But it jumps the first 2 bytes automatically. And so it would skip the first guy, and then it would continue. So if the first guy in that penalty buffer, if he won the fight, it would skip him, and then it would never find him. And it would continue through the code because there was no protection to say, oh, the penalty buffer is only this long. Once it gets to the end of this, just exit the loop, right? No, it just kept going until it found the number it was looking for, the offset of the player, because it already knew the offset of the player it needed to find. And it, somewhere else in the code. And then it was like, all right. And then just kind of messed up, right? And it would just not assign the winner for that fight. But eventually it would stop. So depending on how long there was, if the player was offset 12, let's say, it waited until it found a 12 somewhere in the code, who knows, right? Somewhere in the RAM. So it would be somewhere in the RAM, right? And depending on how quick it found a 12 would be how long the delay would be. Yeah. So when I look back at I'm looking at this code, and then I'm looking at the 93 code, and I'm like, what am I doing wrong here? And then I noticed the 93 code had the penalty buffer labeled 2 bytes before it actually started, because like I said, in the beginning of the loop, it automatically iterates 2. So each time through, it goes +2, +2, +2. It does the +2 before it starts even looking at the data. So 2 bytes before, and that fixed both problems. The winner was always found, and the hesitation was gone. So months, over the course of a few months, off and on, I looked at this problem. I solved it in 10 minutes.
I'm glad I
And
wasn't
it was
part of
a
that.
fault of mine.
That process. There's also the Instigator penalty that's
Mhm.
included in this too.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that sometimes you get the Instigator. That's a carryover, I guess, from '93. It was.
Yeah.
I don't recall that being in '93, but I remember it was in '92. But I don't.
Yeah. It's in 93. So the Instigator doesn't always happen.
Right.
It's randomly. It uses the frame counter and looks at the last two digits of the frame counter. If there's 0, excuse me, if there's 0, then it will assign a fight instigator to the team who started the fight. So you have two fighters. One of them has to start it, initiate the fight. Whether he wins or loses, he's going to get a fight instigator. That occasionally that team will get the fight instigator penalty. Someone else on the ice has to serve it. So usually it goes in the order of players in the team structure. The first player is right wing. So if the right winger got into the fight, the center would be the one going to the box. If the center got into the fight, the right winger would be the one going into the box. Yeah. So it goes like that.
That's an interesting way of doing it.
Yeah, that's how they randomized it. It's it's not bad, but it will only happen like probably every 3 frames. So if you land on a frame that's not one of those, you don't get the instigator if you finish the fight on one of those frames. If you do, you get the instigator penalty. So it's kind of it's a 1 in 3 kind of deal. 1 in 4
penalty buffer.
1 in 4 actually.
Is there a possibility that the penalty buffer can be somehow overflowed because there's just too many delayed penalties?
Yes.
So what is that number? At what point and what happens?
I think it's 28. It's the same. It's been the same size since 92.
So you have to have 28
92 code
delayed penalties?
No, you will never get 20.
Correct.
Penalties, so you don't have to worry about that. Yeah, but it's 28.
Okay. It's definitely not half.
That doesn't mean people in the box. That means 28. Yeah, delayed penalties.
Yeah.
So the most you'll ever see is the 3 would be in there for 2 penalties and the fight instigator, the 2 fights in the fight instigator. There have been cases where I've seen 3 delayed penalties given during normal penalties.
I don't
think I've ever seen more than 3. Yeah,
and 3 was the max for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now consider how many hours you put into this: the sweat, the blood, the tears, everything. Are you a destination or a journey type of guy?
Say that again.
Are you like a destination or the journey type of guy? Like, is it getting there? What I want?
It's always the journey. Yes,
because this has been a heck of a journey for you.
Yeah. Oh no, I learned a lot. I mean, the journey to me is the more. Like I said, I don't really care about fighting, but I learned so much on the way to getting to this end goal that's worth it to me.
I love it.
There's in terms of your.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say your '94 career. It's it's been going on for quite a while. Is this the crowning achievement, the crowning jewel of your career, or is there something else you say? This thing is the best that I've ever done. Could be winning a tournament, right? Like, what?
I guess this because this is something no one ever. 30 plus years, no one ever thought this was going to be able to put back in the game, and I was able to do that. So that are we going to is quite an accomplishment.
We should troll NHL for this. So you guys, you took it out. It's back in. Give him the middle finger and say it's done. Screw you, NHL, for taking it out in the first place. Thank you.
I'll probably get a cease and desist at some point from EA. That's all I'm waiting for.
We're gonna blur our faces, by the way, so they're not gonna come after us. Okay, and I'm Larry, you're Jim, and
change our names on the bottom here. Yeah, no.
SNES. Is there going to be any sort of efforts to do the same on the SNES side of things? I know it's a different CPU and it's a different ball of wax, but
I am an SNES guy at heart. I grew up playing SNES. When I joined this community, I played Super Nintendo, we just have so many more people working on the Genesis side that it was easier to. There's just more hacks. Super Nintendo. Problem with the assembly language is different. The 68K, the Motorola 68K on the Genesis was widely used. Old Apples, classic Apples had it. Amigas had it. It was very popular CPU for the time. Very cheap, very economical. The Super Nintendo is kind of like, no one ever used that processor. I mean, it's loosely based on the 6502, which is very popular process, another very popular one. So the assembly language is different. I would definitely like to take a shot at it at some point, though, because I just need to learn assembly language. 65.
Did NHLPA 93 for
816?
SNES?
I forget what the chip is. I'm sorry.
Did the SNES version of NHLPA 93 have fighting in it? I can't remember it. I just remember it being choppy.
I've never played that one.
Yeah, then I would recommend not. Is the one thing I remember was just so choppy. My friend in Garson Street had the game. It's like, well, this is pathetic compared to the Genesis. But I can't remember if it had fighting in it. And if it did or does, then maybe it's a starting point.
Yeah, definitely.
I
would definitely look into that. Like I said, I have to learn.
Yeah,
I have to learn that. I have to learn that, but I think there's actually a better disassembly tools for Super Nintendo than there are for Genesis. I think there's a couple of emulators that work pretty well. Genesis did not really have many disassembly tools built into emulators, so it might be easier to dive into that code, but adding it, it would depend. Like if 93 Super Nintendo had fighting already, then I think it would be much more possible than it would be if it didn't.
But for the time being, instance, it's just the Genesis.
Yeah, for now.
Just because the Genesis does what the Nintendo don't. It's applicable here, right?
Boost processing, yeah.
The blast
processing. That's what it is.
Yeah.
No,
oh my
god, it's pretty funny. You could see the limitations of the Genesis, though. The number of color displayed on the screen at the same time is so much worse than the Super Nintendo. I mean, it's like when for instance, the graphics in NHL 94, right? Yeah, we can display a 16 color palette for each sprite, each frame, but you're limited to the number of colors you have available to you. They have to be, your RGB values are usually between like a 0 and 255. Well, no, they have to be a multiple of 16. You can't use like 250. You have to use 224. You can't use, so you miss that kind of like dynamic range for colors on the Genesis compared to Super Nintendo, where it's like 65,000, 535. Large amount of colors can be displayed on the screen at once.
Mode 7
graphic. Yeah, listen. Yeah. F-Zero. I mean,
yeah.
No, a game like F-Zero on Genesis. Mario Kart, yeah.
Now there's a way for people out there, if they want to give you something to help support, there's to buy a coffee that I've seen that just first time today, right? So that's live. So people, if they want to provide some financial assistance to you for doing all this, it's there. I'm going to provide.
I appreciate it. I mean, my goal for this was, I originally had people saying, "Oh, you should charge people for it." And I'm like, originally I was like, "Yeah, you know what? You're right. I could make a lot of money off of this." But once you spend so much time, all this time you put into it and things like that, and the blood, sweat, and tears, you're just like, man, I just want everyone to try this because I spent all this time. I just want anyone and everyone to enjoy the work I've done. And I don't really care about the money anymore. You know what I mean? But you want to send me money, I'm not going to turn it down.
I joked a long time ago, you should do a GoFundMe, and you could try to fund enough. You could take a couple of years off work and just dedicate your time 100% towards projects like this. But yeah, just lots more to do, right? And SNES fighting, and as you saying, blocking shots in Genesis.
I'm not done. I want to go back. I think the first thing I'm going to do is maybe take a few weeks off, and then I'm going to go back and do my code analysis again. I want to go over skating. Some of the stuff that I figured out, like goalie, all the goalie stuff. I don't think I have whatchamacallit. I don't have a stream about that. Things like that. I want to work on that. What I went back, what I was originally doing before I got onto this fighting.
This thing took a lot of your now skating backwards. Do you skate as fast backwards as you go skating forward? Do you know this off the top of your head?
I don't think so.
I want to do an analysis of this. Like I was going to do a frame by frame count, get a guy, go from like blue line to blue line and count how many frames going forward, and then do the reverse going backwards, or just 2 points of start and end. I always wanted to know, is it going to the same speed going forward or backwards? And
I don't think so. I don't think it is. If I remember right, it's not.
I'm wondering if it's like just simply your skating speed and then subtracting or dividing it to getting what you're skating backwards. Like there isn't some other formula in there, like weight or agility.
No, it is. Yeah. So your speed is just the value, right?
Yeah.
So it's a lookup table. You have a 0 to 6 speed. That's the maximum. There's a lookup table of maximum velocity, right? So your velocity is controlled by your acceleration. The acceleration is linked to your weight and your agility and the agility of the player. And so the way it kind of works is each frame, it gives you a boost. You're going faster, and then it also takes a little bit off. So it's like this and like this. It's like this. So it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of deal. Maybe like 5 steps forward, 1 step back, until you get to the top speed, right? And then when you're at the top speed, then again, it's still skipping, but it's maybe doing it a little more because you're already at speed. When you hit the brakes, it's a different factor. How fast you slow. If you're fatter, your guy's heavier weight, he's going to slow down. He's going to slow down a bit quicker than a guy who's a lighter weight. And so it's like, see, like we're talking about this right now. I could be talking out of my butt right now because I don't. Those are the things I remember. I have to go back and look at it to be completely sure. But
you're far more of an authoritative figure than I am, so I'm going to take your word as gospel. So we'll run with that. So, John, we exhausted, I hope, the fighting topic. Anything else you want to talk specifically to the fighting ROM that we haven't covered?
Yeah, no, I'll mention this one thing I discovered. So there's a player structure for each player, and that holds a lot of information. It holds the player's velocity, the direction they're going in, the frame, their current animation frame, their shot power, shot accuracy, agility, skating, speed, things like that, right? These are all contained in a structure for each player. And each player has their own set of flags. So there'll be like a flag for, is he on the ground? Or is he locked in an animation? He's doing something that he can't get out of, like one-timer animation is a perfect example, right? When he's got the stick cocked back, you can't hit the guy because he's considered locked in an animation. So there's a bunch of flags, and 92 had a few, but then there were more added in 93, and then 94 uses the same flags as 93. The problem was, there were flags I'm seeing in the code being set, and I'm like, what the hell do these do? Because they're not 92. I'm like, what the hell does this flag do? And it's hard to figure out. You look at the flag and then you try to see what causes it to be set. There's a lot of game condition flags too. Like there's a flag when you skate into the offensive zone. There's a flag that turns on for the team. Things like that. As far that's usually related to offsides. It's the puck over the blue line. Okay, now there can't be offsides anymore, things like that. And these are all things that we don't, I have no idea what they are until I test them out. So there's this one player flag. I had no idea what it was. I'm like, why is this why is this set here? It had to do with like it would check it occasionally when the guy was skating. You're like, what the, like, what is this? And I noticed that when I pulled over the fight code, I saw this flag being set. And it's the only time I've seen it set, because in the original 94 code, it checks the flag, but it never set. I couldn't find where it set the flag, where it turned it on. And so I'm like, oh, okay. So I noticed when you fight a guy and you knock him out and he's injured for the game, he still has to skate to the box.
Yeah.
And what he'll do, what the flag does is when the flag's turned on, this is part of the skating routine, which is where I first originally saw it. He will do the toddle animation while he skates to the box, and he's very slow because he's just been injured for the game. He's got to go serve his 5-minute major in the penalty box. So it takes him a while to skate to the box. So if you ever injure, a player for the game in a fight, and they end up going in a box, you'll see him do that little toddle, and that's exactly what that flag was. Like I said, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what set that flag, and then I put the code in from fighting. Yeah. I was like, that's it.
That's awesome.
There's a lot of things in this game still that are like that, and those are things I have to find out what they actually do.
32 years and change, and it's still learning stuff about it.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? My wife's pestering me. I have to end this.
Yeah, no problem.
But we'll be back, John. Anything, final words before we sign off?
No. Thanks to everyone. I hope you enjoy the ROM, and give me some feedback.
I know. Please. I have given you some feedback, and you do it, you take it and you adjust. So like, you're not just, it's not going in one ear and out the other. So
no,
certainly recommend everybody give it a shot. So
yeah, for sure.
Yes. Appreciate you taking the time to come on.
Yeah. Thank you, Len.
And if you made it this far, I'd like to ask you if you could please leave a like, subscribe if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Give it a 5-star review, because that helps with the algorithm, because we want to get more people listening to the NHL 94 podcast and get them back in the 94 world. So with that, take care and have a happy new year.